Okay, so so just as a quick recap for everybody here, we started Likutey Moharan and Torah Tet last week. This is a beautiful Torah, and it's a great lesson to go off of the lesson that we just did before that, lesson 8. The reason being, because in lesson 8, the whole entire essence of that lesson was to explain that where are our lackings coming from? Where are our struggles coming from? Where's that emptiness coming from that we all feel in our life, especially right now? And he says that all lackings come from a lack of life force. It comes from a lack of chiyut, okay? It comes from a lack of energy. So beautiful. So this was what the whole lesson was about. Now, this lesson is going to add to that lesson and say, now, what is that lack of life force? What is that thing that we're missing? So Rabbi Nachman says in the beginning of this lesson that all life force comes from tefillah. All chiyut comes from emunah, comes from tefillah, comes from prayer. Now we can understand as well why Rabbi Nachman was saying that where does life force come from in the 8th lesson? How do we get it? He says we get it by connecting to the tzaddik of the generation. So how does that connect to tefillah? How does that connect to emunah? Because Rabbi Nachman's saying now that really the whole essence of the tzaddik's life force that he's able to give to us is because of his emunah. The more emunah, the more faith that a Jew has, the more life force he has. And this is, if you think about it, it makes sense. When you get up in the morning, if you don't feel good about your life and you don't feel good about your day, you don't feel good about the prospects of your day and what's going to happen today. So then you don't want to get out of bed. You don't have a lot of life force. But what if you wake up in the morning and you're doing great at work and you're doing the job that you dreamed of and you're helping people in a way that you always wanted to. Things are going well with your family. You're excited about whatever is going to happen today because you believe it's going to be good. So now you're excited to get up in the morning. So we see just from this, little example that life force really comes from faith. Your faith in the good that's taking place in your life. So the more that you believe that whatever is happening in your life is good, that it's from Hashem, the more that you have life force, the more that you have energy. Okay. But Rabbi Nachman's chiddush is that emunah is tefillah. Meaning to say, how do I get that emunah? How do I get to the point that I realize that everything is from Hashem? How do I get to the point that that's in my heart? It's not only in my head that I'm contemplating it or learning it, but that literally it's in my heart and I feel it and I experience it and I'm living with that reality that Hashem is ein od milvado, that he truly is all that there is. There's nothing else besides him. And I'm, so to speak, living within the secret life of God, as Rabbi David Aaron says. So how do I get to that point that I live in that reality, that I feel and I experience that I'm in the womb of Hashem, so to speak? Which is a good analogy, by the way. And maybe why we don't feel that Hashem is taking care of us, even though he's literally feeding us at every moment what we need. The reason is because it's like we're in his womb. Because when a baby is in its mother's womb, he's receiving all of his sustenance from his mother, and yet he doesn't actually know that he's getting it from her, and he's not conscious at all. This is a very, very good analogy. But Rabbi Nachman says that the way that you do that is through tefillah, that tefillah produces emunah. The more that a person prays and the more fervently he prays, we're learning in this lesson, the more he prays with energy and intensity, the more he prays with all of his koach, all of his power, his inner power, to that degree, he draws down emunah upon himself. He draws down this all-encompassing faith, which is internalized in his heart. So the more intense and the more fervently you pray, the more that you draw down emunah, and therefore, the more life force that you have. Okay, great. Now, what does this life force do for you? What does this emunah do for you? So Rabbi Nachman teaches in many places in Likutey Moharan that emunah changes nature, that the whole entire ikar of emunah, whether he's going to say it in this lesson or in lesson 7, or he's going to say it later on when he speaks about receiving healing outside of medication, not needing medication or doctors to receive healing, but to be able to actually contort and change and augment nature in a way that you can literally heal physically without having to do anything beside eat bread and drink water. So this sounds like something unbelievable. This sounds like something, it's hard to fathom. And the reason it's so hard to fathom is because you need to reach a very high level of emunah, of faith, to be able to cause that to take place. And there's many things that need to take place before you get to that level of emunah. However, it's explicit from Rabbi Nachman that it's possible. Just like Rabbi Nachman says, it's possible for you to make your parnasa without having to physically go do anything. So too, he says you can achieve healing from physical illness without having to receive medicine or some type of treatment from a doctor. And here he's explaining why. What's the reason? Because there's a famous midrash that says that there is no blade of grass that grows unless there's a malach, there's a spiritual entity, which we call an angel. Okay, we usually picture like a flying baby, but this is really from Christianity. Malach literally means a messenger. Hashem has spiritual messengers that are entities which exist in a non-physical format, and they, so to speak, are given tasks to perform in this world as Hashem's helpers. Okay, so there is no blade of grass that grows unless a malach strikes it and tells it to grow. Meaning to say, there's nothing that happens in this world unless, so to speak, a malach comes and tells it to grow. Okay. Now, what is that caused the malach to tell it to grow? So we know that there's a kochav, there's a star, which is over it, which is, so to speak, informing this malach to tell the grass to grow. Okay, and that's the end of the midrash. However, Rabbi Nachman adds a final point. That is there anything above the kochavim? Is there anything above the stars? Is there anything above the malach? Is there anything above these entities which are causing the grass to grow? So what did Hashem do? He took Avram Avinu out of his tent and he said, do not believe that you're part of this natural world. You're Jewish. Do you know what that means? That means that you completely transcend physicality. How did he show him that? He showed him that by giving him a Brit Milah. Ultimately, that on the 8th day, every single Jew receives a Brit Milah. What's the Brit Milah? You're removing the outside. You're removing the klipa. You're removing the foreskin of this most intimate part of your body that creates reality, literally. You're removing the outside, the husk, to see that really there's a crown there, to see that truly that there's something transcendent in that place, something life-giving and creating. But you only do that, so to speak, by removing that husk. Now we know that Hashem told Avram Avinu that he's going to make his children as numerous as the stars. And he also told him that I'm going to give you the land of Israel. And he couldn't believe it. And Rabbi Nachman says in the 7th Torah of Likutey Moharan, what is the land of Israel? It's Emunah. It's Emunah. Meaning to say, what is it that's going to make it that Avraham and all of his children are going to be able to change, contort, and augment nature? It's going to be through their tefillah. It's going to be through their prayer. Because it's tefillah itself, which causes the kochavim, the stars, to rise up, which causes the malach to strike the blade of grass, causes a change in nature. It's this change in nature that's all predicated based on emunah. This, I had a chiddush, is the deeper secret of the pasuk that it says that tzaddik be'emunato tichyeh, a famous pasuk from Habakkuk, where it says that the tzaddik lives with his emunah. Rabbi Nachman says davka, he lives with his emunah, meaning it's his emunah that's his life force. It's his emunah that's causing his reality to take place. He's living b'schut his emunah. It's the emunah itself that's giving birth to his reality. And it says in the Zohar that every single Jew is a tzaddik, b'schut the Brit, meaning to the part of him that's the tzaddik, that part of him has emunah. That part of him is alive. That part of him is connected. When we are attached to this part of us, then we're able to change reality. And this is the secret as well of Rabbi Nachman. He brings this Gemara all the time, that the tzaddik rules. What does it mean that the tzaddik, Moshe, the tzaddik rules? It means that Hashem, so to speak, gives up the world to the tzaddik, that he should be able to cause the events that take place in the world. In fact, Rabbi Nachman went so far as to say that all of my followers, that let's say, for instance, you had a traumatic incident in your life or experiences in your life. And now all of a sudden you come across my teachings and you have an awakening. And now you're going out and you're giving these teachings over to others and you're healing from your wounds and you're growing from your struggles in your life. So Rabbi Nachman says, don't think that you can move one hand unless I determine it. Meaning that in a very deep way, Rabbi Nachman is causing every single one of us who are learning his lessons and attaching to him and to receive goodness from from his wisdom, that all of these things that we're doing now as a result is not really our own doing, but so to speak, that the tzaddik Moshe, the tzaddik is causing what's taking place down here. And that's why Rabbi Nachman says that my fire is going to burn until the Mashiach comes, meaning to say that Rabbi Nachman is hinting to the fact that he is causing what's taking place until the Geula, until the redemption. And not to think that you're doing anything of your own doing, or even let's say that you get to Uman for Rosh Hashanah because you want to, because you raised the money for it, because you bought a ticket for it, because against all odds you got there. Because in the end of the day, like Rav Chaim Kramer is going to tell you, when you get to Uman, Bezrat Hashem for Rosh Hashanah, you're only there because the Rabbi wanted you there. This is it. And the reason is because the Rebbe is the tzaddik. But you each have a tzaddik inside of you. So when you tap into the tzaddik inside of you, the tzaddik Moshe, the tzaddik rules. How does he rule? He rules with his Emunah. He lives with his Emunah. Okay? This is what we've done so far together. Now Rabbi Nachman is going to say, this is the way that you merit a zivug, and this is the way that you merit parnasa. This is the way that you merit your other half, right? Your soulmate, your besheret. And this is the way that you merit bread, sustenance, parnasa. Like it says, ein kemach, ein Torah. If you can't get kemach, if you don't have money, you're not going to be able to support yourself and learn. I realized, by the way, that what's the gematria of kemach? Nachman. Ein Nachman, ein Torah. You don't have Nachman, you don't really have Torah. Okay, good. So, Rabbi Nachman says, a person needs tremendous merit. To be able to cause his own tefillah to ascend to its proper place. Meaning to say, later on, Rabbi Nachman says in Likutey Moharan, Tinyana, the second part, in Ayin Gimel, that in order for a person to be able to merit for his path of prayer to be acquired, he needs to say Tehillim. And here he says that it's almost impossible for a person to get his prayer up his own gate. He's going to say in a little bit that the way that we do that successfully is by attaching to the tzaddik of the generation, because he himself knows where everybody's prayer goes. This is the function of the tzaddik ador, the tzaddik emet, that he's able to know where all the tefillot of the Jewish people go, which fits in very well with what we learned earlier in Likutey Moharan, that it's the tzaddik himself who's building the Mishkan. He's building the final Beit HaMikdash. Moshe Rabbeinu is building that Mishkan with the tefillahs of the Jewish people. They bring them to Moshe, and Moshe builds the Mishkan. Like Rabbi Nachman says famously, on the kasha between Rashi and the Rambam, we know Rashi says, how's the Beit HaMikdash going to be built? It's going to be built by Hashem. The Rambam, who's more practical, Sephardic, he says, Mapiton, what are you talking about? A building's going to come from the sky? What are you talking about? The Jews are going to build it. They're going to go back to the land of Israel. They're going to physically build the Beit HaMikdash. That's how the third Beit HaMikdash is going to be built. Okay, but these are two completely different opinions. There's no way to put these two together. Either Hashem is creating it and it's coming down, or like the Rambam says, the Jewish people are going to come build it. Comes Rabbi Nachman in his ingenious way, and he brings the two together. And he says they're both right. How is that possible? He says that when the Jewish people pray with fervor, when they pray with koach, when they pray with energy, you are literally creating a brick in the Beit HaMikdash. You give that brick to the tzaddik of the generation, to the Moshe Rabbeinu of the door. He takes that brick and he gives it to Hashem, and he builds that Beit HaMikdash. And then the Beit HaMikdash comes down home. Meaning to say, the Rambam's right, because we are going to build the Beit HaMikdash through our tefillahs. And the Rashi's right, because in the end, it's going to be supernatural. And Hashem is going to bring down the Beit HaMikdash itself. Second, let me just put everybody on mute. Although there's some nice, interesting music going on in the background. Okay. So now Rabbi Nachman says as well, don't be fooled and think that your parnasa comes because you got a certain degree, because you have a certain CV or resume or application or certain connections. Your parnasa comes from tefillah, emunah, because ultimately the events that take place in this world are all rooted in faith. Faith is the birthplace of the events that take place, and so too your zivug. And don't think to yourself, well, I'm already married, so this lesson doesn't really apply to me, or this part of the lesson doesn't apply to me. That's not true either, because Rabbi Nachman says very beautifully that a zivug is anything that's uniting or interacting. Meaning, when you're asking Hashem for a good zivug, you're not just asking him for a partner in life. You're also asking that the relationship you already have is going well, because anybody who's married knows that every day could be something different. One day could be beautiful, we're getting along, we're connecting, we're vibing. And then the next day, all of a sudden, I'm her worst enemy, she's my worst enemy. We're at each other's throats. What changed from yesterday to today? That's not natural, right? It should just continue and carry on by the laws of energy. It just continues going the way that it's going. But it's not true. And anybody who's married or is together with a partner knows that. So what's really taking place? Your emunah, meaning your tefillah, the intensity of your tefillah, the length of your tefillah, the power of your prayer is informing and creating the quality of your relationship with your spouse every day, every single day. And this is why in my prayer every single day, my hibodedut, I always add, and I always ask Hashem, please, that I should have peace with my wife. The Shekhinah should be in our home, that our children should only see my wife and I getting along, that there's peaceful, happy, joyful relations, that we're not just staying the same, but we're growing and we're inspired, and all of these things, because you really have to pray for this, specifically the zivug, and specifically for parnasa. Because Rabbi Nachman explains this Gemara, this famous Gemara is in Sota and Pasachim, that he explains in these two places that it's as difficult for Hashem to split the sea as it is for you to get your parnasa, as it is for you to get your zivug. So what does it mean it's as difficult for him to split the sea? Obviously, it's not hard for Hashem to do anything. So then what's this Gemara coming to teach you? They're saying it's like the way that Hashem splits the sea. It's like the way he brings you your zivug. It's like the way he brings you your parnasa. Meaning that the sea split into 12 sections. The Pirkei, the Rebbe Eliezer explains. Meaning for us, what are these 12 sections? It's the 12 nusachot of prayer. It's the 12 versions of prayer that the Zohar speaks about. Meaning when you tap into your own personal gate, you create your parnasa. You're creating a good zivu, you're creating a good relationship, or you're finding your zivu as a result of this. All of this comes about through prayer. And this is what those Gemaras mean when he says, it's like the same way that Hashem has to split the sea through the prayer of the Jewish people. That's how you get your parnasa. That's how you get your zivug. And this is all hinted to in Masechet Brachot, where it says, V'zeh shamar Abba Binyamin. This is Daf Hey. Kol yamav hayiti mitzaer, al shnei devarim. All the days of Abba Benjamin's life, he pained himself to make sure two things took place. One, al tefillati shtiyeh samuch lamitati. Very enigmatic. He prayed that his prayer, he wanted that his tefillah should be close to his bed. Okay, so what's the pshat? What's the simple understanding? That as soon as he woke up in the morning, he prayed to Hashem. Like we say, Moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam, shechazarte li mishpati b'chemla, rabba emunatecha. Okay? We're saying thank you to Hashem as soon as we get up in bed. We know that Rabbi Nachman himself brings down in Rabbi Nachman's wisdom that when he got up in the morning, he used to throw everything on Hashem. Whatever's going to happen in work today is because of you. Whatever's going to happen my zivug today is because of you. Whatever's going to happen. And he would throw everything on Hashem completely before he started his day. And he said, I wanted to go according to your ratzon. And then for the rest of the day, he had peace because he knew that whatever was taking place was because Hashem wanted it to be taking place. However, Rabbi Nachman is saying there's a bigger secret here. Shipalel derech sha'ar hamate shalo, because the word mita, bed, is the same exact shorish of the word of mateh, staff. We know that there was 12 staffs, just like there was 12 versions of prayer. There's 12 gates that you can bring your own personal prayer through. So what was Abba Benjamin really saying? Ki yesh shnei masar matot, because there's 12 tribes. V'chol echad yesh lo sham yuchad. And for every tribe, there's a unique gate which is specifically connected to that tribe. Yipalel al shalo titrachek tefilato mitato shalo. And what was Abba Benjamin saying? What was he painting himself over every single day? That his prayer would be near his bed, his mita, meaning near his mateh, near his own specific unique gate. Why was he painting himself every day over this for his whole life? The Gemara has to say in the very beginning of Shas, to teach you how important it is to make sure that your prayer is going up your own gate, because all the events that are taking place in your life is really the function and the outpouring and the revelation of your own level of Emunah. Like Rabbi Nachman says later in Likutey, that the greater a person's Emunah, the easier things are in his life. The less Emunah that he has, the less quality of his Emunah, the less strong is his faith, the more difficult the events are in his life. Now, on the one hand, he's meaning that it just feels more difficult, because a person knows that the more faith that he has, then the events that take place in his life, they just don't feel as hard. You feel lighter, you feel easier, you feel more connected, okay? But he's saying even more than that, that literally the Emunah is what's causing your life. To the degree that your Emunah is strong, to that degree you have life force. If you want to think about it in a parable, which is a good one based on Kabbalah, Tefillah is like a womb. Tefillah is like the birthplace of your day. It's like the birthplace of your life. Everything that takes place in that womb is what causes life to be given birth to. What's the life in this case? The life is what takes place in your day. That's like the child that comes out of the womb. So what causes the child to come out of the womb in a healthy, happy, joyful way? It's the quality of the womb. To the degree that the mother is bringing in nutrients and vitamins into that womb, to that degree, the life that comes out of there is healthy and happy. So too, when a Jew prays with fervor, with koach, he's creating a womb in which the events that take place in his life are good, are happy. You know, just as an example of this, yesterday I was really praying to Hashem that, my relationship with my wife should be good, and we should be able to have things to do that bring us closer, and that the relationship should just keep growing. As soon as I got back into the apartment, after that Hibodedut, my wife says, "Hey, by the way, my mother wants to buy us tickets for a concert next week. Do you want to go?" And what are the chances of that? So where is that coming from? Because I would never have thought to take her to that concert, or and her mother's paying for it, which is great. So how did all that came about? Through the tefillah, that came about through the Emunah. Because I know that my zivug, meaning still now to this day, if I'm going to have good relations with my wife, it's going to be because I prayed for it with intensity, with fervor. So because I pray like that, I had such a beautiful thing happen to me today. This happens a lot, by the way. There are times that I forget to pray, that I should be good with my wife, and I come home and it's not good. So not to take anything for granted. Because this language of mateh, of staff, ki mateh lashon zivug, because the staff is the concept of zivug. Like it says, netuna, because the second thing that Abba Benjamin prayed for, not just that his tefillah should be near his bed, meaning that his tefillah should be in his own gate of prayer, that he should be able to get it up into his own personal gate, but also that his bed should be placed between north and south. Umitahu bechinat zivug. What is that talking about? So we know, we're going to see in a moment, that the different directions correspond to different things that you want to pray for. We know in the Beit HaMikdash that Hashem said, "This is my house of prayer." So everything in the Beit HaMikdash is corresponding to like the highest level of Emunah, to the highest level of Tefillah. And we know that in the Beit HaMikdash, you had the Shulchan, the table, which was to the north, and you had the menorah that was to the south. The menorah represents Torah. The menorah represents Chokhmah. It represents wisdom. That's to the south. because Kabbalistically, the south is the place of spirituality. The south is the place of wisdom. The north is the place of physicality. That's why the table is in the north. And that's also why wealth comes from the north. It comes from that table. This is also a code word for your wife, because your wife also comes from the north. Okay, and that's why it says that a person's parnasa only comes b'schut his wife, because his wife also comes from the north. And this is another reason why women in general are more connected to the physical world. They're more interested in the ongoings of social society. All of their body is actually more connected to the physical world, because their soul, their neshama, is actually rooted from the north. Okay, so now he says like this. So besides the fact, what happens when you pray to Hashem? So what you're doing is you're creating a zivug between Hashem and the Shekhinah. So it sounds very mystical. I'm going to try to simplify it. How is it that when a Jew prays with fervor, he's causing a zivug, a union between the Shekhinah and Hashem? Because it says that Hashem is resting on the prayers of the Jewish people, meaning that the Shekhinah is the prayer that's coming out of your mouth. When you're praying with fervor, when you're praying with energy, when you're praying with life force, that is the Shekhinah that's coming out of your mouth. So you're uniting the Shekhinah with Hashem because you're talking to Hashem. That speech that's coming out of your mouth is the Shekhinah. So you're uniting Hashem and the Shekhinah. And when you make a union between Hashem and the Shekhinah, Hashem then makes a union between you and your spouse. Or Hashem makes a union between you and your future spouse. Or Hashem makes a union between you and your parnasa, because we know that money comes from your wife, meaning to say that's also a zivug, right? You also have to draw in the quality of your parnasa. It also needs to come in just in the way of the zivug. So that's why the pasuk says, "B'shivri lachem matei lachem," that I'm going to break you. When I break your staff of bread. Why is it a staff of bread? Why is it mate? And why is it bread, lechem? Kishnei masar matot gormin zivug of farnasin, because it is the 12 matot, tribes, gates, staff of prayer that causes the zivug, the union between you and your parnasa. Ki gam hipalel al shifto, because he was praying that he should merit to have she's keli shnei shulchanut, that he should have these two tables, the table of chokhmah, the table of wisdom, and the table of parnasa, the table of prosperity. That's what it meant, that he wanted his table between the north and the south, meaning he wanted that his tefillah should be with koach, it should be with energy, it should be with life force, so that it goes up through his own personal gate. And as a result of it going up through his own personal gate, then what's going to happen is he's going to encompass both of these tables, meaning he's going to have a quality zivug with his wife, and he's also going to have quality parnasa come down. Because when a person has this concept of the Shekhinah, he draws down both of them. He brings down both of them through his prayer. This is also the secret, says the Yikar de Shabbat, is something beautiful. How many loaves of bread were on the Shulchan in the Beit HaMikdash? Or in the Mishkan? How many loaves of bread were there? If anybody knows the Torah of the Arizal and follows the Torah of the Arizal, or has been to the house of a person who he keeps them in Hagim of the Arizal, they're going to see 12 loaves of bread on that table. So why is he 12 loaves of bread? Because we see now the secret. It's corresponding to the 12 tribes, the 12 gates in which the Jewish people get their prayers up through. Meaning, how do you merit that shulchan? You merit it through the 12 loaves, meaning the 12 tribes, okay? So all of this is to teach you that the reason why a person's prayers are not getting answered is for one reason alone. He needs to get his prayer up his gate. When it's not going up his own personal gate, it does not get answered. When it does, not only does it get answered, it literally changes the physical world. That Hashem mechadeshes, he renews all of physical reality through this. But now the question is, how do I get my prayer up through my own personal gate? This is beautiful. Okay, great. Now I'm inspired. I'm excited. I want to go do Ibodadu now. I want to go pray to Hashem. I want to bring in more parnasa. I want to have a higher quality zivug with my own wife, or I want to bring in my actual zivug to get married. So how do I make sure that my prayer goes through my own gate? So here's the kicker. V'Yaakov Who were the 12 gates? Who were the 12 tribes' father? Who was the source of those 12 tribes, the root of those 12 tribes? It was Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu was the complete encompassment of all the 12 tribes. He encompassed all of the 12 aspects of the Jewish people. And as a result of the fact that he encompassed all of the 12 tribes, he knew the root of every single person's tribe, because he is the root of every person's tribe. Okay? So here's a very big secret. How does a person get his prayers answered? He needs to get it through his own tribe. How does he make sure for sure he's connecting to his own personal gate? He does it by attaching himself to the tzaddik of the generation, by attaching himself to the tzaddik emet, to the true tzaddik, who in this case is called Yaakov Avinu. He's able to then make sure that his prayer gets into his own gate, because Yaakov Avinu is the root of all the souls of the Jewish people. And this is, by the way, the deeper understanding of what is the tzaddik of the generation. Why do we even have one, and what makes him different than, let's say, any other Jew? Like when Korach said to Moshe, we're all holy. What makes you so great? You know, why does everything have to go through you? Or by Yosef at Tzaddik, that Paro said to him, nothing is going to take place unless your hand goes up or your feet go up. So what is that talking about? So the Arizal teaches that the Jewish people are like a tree, and you have branches of that tree, and you have fruit of that tree, you have leaves of that tree, but you also have a trunk of that tree. And every single thing that takes place in that tree is coming from the trunk, which is coming from the roots. Okay? So the root of the tree of the Jewish people is the tzaddik of the generation. He is the roots of that tree. And therefore, as a result of that, when you connect to him, you're connecting to the root of the souls of all the Jewish people. This is the reason why he has the koach to be able to affect all the Jewish people, to cause them all to get closer to Hashem. It's not simply because he learns the most Torah. It's not simply because he reached a high spiritual level. It's also because his soul is called an encompassing soul, a neshama iklalit, like the tikkun klali, okay? Or that's like the encompassing rectification, because it's through the tzaddik of the generation, it's through the tzaddik emet, that you're connecting to this all-encompassing soul, and then all of your prayers are going up to your own personal gate, and it's guaranteed. And that's why Rabbi Nachman says that before a Jew prays, he should really attach his prayers that he's going to say to all the true tzaddikim of the generation, all the true tzaddikim who are alive today, and is the tradition of Breslov Hasidim, to then finalize and finish off by saying, and bifrat, specifically to the tzaddik Yisod Olam, to Rabbi Nachman ben Fega, because he's the essence in our generation of the tzaddik of the generation. So when you have your prayers, they're attached to him. You're not praying to him, but by attaching your prayers to him, he's making sure that your prayer goes up to its specific gate. And maybe this is the secret of Rabbi Nachman means when he says, don't think that you're doing anything without my haskama. Because it must be that in the end, your tefillah is only going up and it's causing a change in your life, because the tzaddik, so to speak, helping you get it up to the gate. And that's why Rabbi Nachman says that you need to get to me for Rosh Hashanah, because then for the rest of the year, I'm able to help you do such a thing. And that's why it says in Bereshit, Yasof Yaakov Raglav Alamita. At the end of Yaakov's life, it said a very bizarre thing, that Yaakov lifted his feet up on his bed. It should just say that Yaakov passed away. Why does it have to tell us that Yaakov lifted his feet up on his bed? To teach you that the feet is the concept of the Jewish people's prayers. What does it mean that he lifted them up on the bed? It means that he got all of those prayers up through their specific gate, because the concept of the mita, of the bed, is the same exact inyan of your gate. Like we said, Mate's staff is the same as gate. So he lifted all of his prayers, meaning his feet, up on the bed, and that's what's going to bring about the geula. Zebechina tefillah, Moshe Katuv, like it says, Tzedek lefanav yahalech. Famous Gemara, it says that if a Jew prays in the morning before he goes to work, before he does anything related to his parnasa, then Hashem is going to cause him to make money that day. Meaning Hashem is going to take over his business for the rest of that day. Any Jew who merits to get up in the morning, and before he does anything with work, he goes on his phone, he does any of his secular stuff, he first goes praise to Hashem in Shachrit. The Gemara guarantees that Hashem is going to do his business for that day. Where does this come from? It comes from the Pasuk in Tehillim. It says, Tzaddik lefanav yahalech. Righteousness will go before him. And we know in the Zohar that the word tzedek is code word for malchut. Okay. Now in our case, what's malchut? Malchut is tefillah, meaning tefillah lefanav yahalech. That when a Jew prays lefanav yahalech, Hashem goes before him. And then shaya maasef kol tefillot. In this case, it's the concept of the tzaddik Yaakov is gathering up our feet onto the bed, meaning onto our personal gate of prayer, which comes about all through him. This is the secret of why the Arizal said that when a person prays Nusach Arizal, because we know that the Arizal came up with his own Nusach, his own version of prayer, there's a tradition that if you pray in any other way, you might get it up or you may not get it up through your own gate. But anybody who prays Nusach Arizal, he's for sure going to get up his gate of his own personal gate. What's the reason? Because the Arizal said that this Nusach, it encompasses all the Nusachs. This is the reason why Chabad, they daven according to the Nusach Arizal. That's why the Hasidim, they all daven Nusach Sephard, because it's all based on the Torah of the Arizal. And the Sephardim themselves, obviously, they pray according to the Nusach of the Arizal. So this is the reason, because the Arizal was a tzaddik ador, he was a tzaddik of the generation. He was the Bechina of the Mashiach ben Yosef. And therefore, as a result of that, anybody who attached themselves to him, they got their prayers up their own personal gate, because he's the root of the souls of the Jewish people. And this is the end of the lesson. And then we'll take questions. And Yaakov gave this power to Yosef. Where did Yosef have the ability to be able to make sure that everybody's prayer is going up its own personal gate? Because the Pasuk says in Bereshit, Bani natati lecha Shechem, I am giving to you a double portion, achar alechecha, that one more so than that of your brothers. So Rabbi Nachman is going to say a very big secret, that this place that's called Shechem, that Yaakov gave to Yosef as the double portion. Why Shechem? What's so special about the city of Shechem? Because according to Kabbalah, the world is created and it exists on three levels, three planes of existence. And each of those three planes is connected to the word Shechem, because we have the first letter of Shechem, which is an acronym for Shafal. Shafal means lowly, meaning it's connected to this physical world. Anything that takes place on this level of this physical world is called Shafal. Okay? Then we have a higher plane of existence. That's Kochav. That's the Chaf in Shechem. And then finally, what do we say is above the Kochav? What's above the stars which cause the plants to grow? It's the Malach. So we have the three levels of existence. We have the grass that's growing, that's in the lowly world. We have the Kochav, that's the star that causes it to grow. And we have the Malach that's striking it. Okay? So that's all alluded to in this place called Shechem. Meaning that Yaakov was telling his son Yosef, I'm giving you a gift. Rabbi Nachman says, what is the firstborn portion? It's really tefillah, it's Emunah. He was giving him Emunah. He was giving him the ability to get his prayers answered, that all of the prayers would go up his personal gate, and that all the Jewish people's prayers would get answered, b'schut him, that he would be the root of the souls of the Jewish people. Okay? So this is all alluded to in Shechem, because he's saying, and Rashi explains, how did Yaakov conquer Shechem? He didn't do it with sword, he didn't do it with weapons, even though that was pshat. It said that he did it with his sword and with his bow. But Rashi says there, what was Yaakov's sword and bow? It was his tefillah and his bakasha. It was his prayer and his supplication. How did Yaakov overcome and augment, manipulate the physical world? How did he cause it to go according to his ratzon? He did it by tefillah, and that's how he got Shechem, meaning that's how he was able to cause what takes place in this world, through the zivugim, through the union that's caused between a Jew's prayer and the Shem, between the Shem and the Shekhinah. This is the Shafel, the Kochav, and the Malach. And that's why, like he says, he merited all of this through his tefillah. Like we just said, that Uncle says, what does it mean that he took the hand from the hand of the Emorite, meaning Esav, which is this physical world. He took it with his sword and his bow, meaning my sword and my bow, not Esav's sword and bow. What's the Jew's sword and bow? It is his own tefillah. It's his own prayer. Bezrat Hashem, next week, we're going to continue this lesson and we're going to see what is that causes the greatest interference. Why are we not getting our prayers up through our own personal gate? We're going to see that there's something called a klipa. And these klipot, we need to overcome these klipot in order to get our prayers up through our own personal gate and to draw down the zivug, both within our actual physical union with our spouse, so that there's peace between us, in order to draw down our union with our spouse, in order to create more parnasa, more financial sustenance, more livelihood, and anything in your life, even your relationships with your friends, family, any event that takes place in your life, it's a zivug. It's like the Midrash says that Hashem already created the world and everything that's in it. So what has he been doing since the 6 days of creation? So the Midrash says he's been making zivugim. Now on paper, this is very hard to understand. I thought Hashem's causing everything that takes place. The answer is, according to Rabbi Nachman, one and the same thing. Everything that takes place is b'schut zivug. Nothing takes place unless there's some type of spiritual union above. That spiritual union above causes the event that takes place down here below. The quality of the union above creates the quality of the union down here. It's like a movie or a projection. And what is it that creates the quality of the union above? It's a Jew's tefillah. When a Jew prays with prayer, when he prays with energy, when he prays with koach, when he prays with life force, when he prays with fervor, when he prays almost with like a violence or like this intense energy, like Rabbi Nachman said, I want my students to be like wild beasts. So when you pray like that, then you cause very high quality zivugim, and then things happen in your life that are completely malamin teva. You see that Hashem literally changes your life and dictates with your tefillah. Anybody have any questions from today's lesson? Did anybody hear that, class? That
I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Slam. I was going to make a very bad joke. Go ahead.
Okay. So, wow, thank you so much. It's really, I'm very grateful that you had this class. Let me take this off. Okay, so I've been learning with a chavruta, Likutey Moharan. I've been on a mission to find other Breslovers, and so he gave me a beautiful gift, and he gave me the abridged version of Likutey Moharan, which is phenomenal. So here I am, I'm following along, like jumping back and forth, and I have my Likutey Moharan here, I have my abridged version here. I'm like, so the question I have, and I think you might have just answered it, but I just want to make sure. The whole time I have this question, I think you might have just mamash just answered at the very end. But okay, so it says here in this lesson 9 that a person receives vitality through prayer. And then it goes on to say, okay, of every relationship, it talks about a man's relationship with wife, livelihood, friends, parnasa, okay. But then when a person's prayer reaches perfection, it supplies vitality to 3 parts of the universe: the lower physical world, the world of the stars, and the world of the malach, like you said. I guess my question is how to perfect one's prayer, right?
Oh, good.
There's so many different ways to pray, and of course, I want all these great things, and I pray every day in shacharit, mincha, arvit, and hitboridut when I can, and for as long as I can. But to perfect this skill, how do we do this?
Yes.
And I have another question after also, but
okay. So Michael Ben Melech, I don't know if you're there, but this is Michael's favorite Torah. And
I'm here and I'm listening.
Okay, cool. So Michael knows that in Tinyana, Rabbi Nachman has an amazing Torah, Bezrat Hashem will do in the future, where he explains that a Jew, it's incumbent upon every Jew. What is the purpose of a Jew's life? He says to be able to have memshala, to be able to have control over these entities which we call malachim, these spiritual realities which exist and cause the events that take place in this world, obviously al pi Hashem, whatever Hashem wants, that you're supposed to rise above those malachim and you're supposed to control those malachim. Rabbi Nachman says there, how do you do that? You do that by perfecting your Emunah, okay? But Rabbi Nachman says that the only way to perfect your Emunah is by drawing nevuah, is by drawing prophecy. Okay, so obviously the concept of perfecting your prayer is a very, very high level. And we know that there's a tradition that Rabbi Nachman says that the Mashiach Zikenu, literally Mashiach ben David, he says he's going to be spending his whole life perfecting his prayer. Because he says that his ability to overcome all of the difficulties that he faces on an individual level and all the challenges of the Jewish people at large, it's completely predicated on the quality of his prayer. And only when he reaches this, so to speak, magnum opus, when he has completely perfected his tefillah, at that point, he's going to bring Geula to the world. So the answer is, first of all, great question. Secondly, great kippah. Thirdly, the answer is, it takes a lot of spiritual work. It takes a lot of guarding of the eyes. It takes a lot of trusting in tzaddikim. It takes a lot of hibodedut. It takes a lot of going to the mikveh. It takes a lot of going to Uman for Rosh Hashanah. To be able to perfect your prayer means that you have perfected all aspects of your being. Because we know that Kabbalistically, the Sfirot, the last Sfira is Malchut. That's Tefillah. And we know that Emunah or Malchut or Tefillah is really the outpouring of the 9 Sfirot above it. Because according to the Zohar, Malchut has no light of its own, meaning prayer has no light of its own. Where does it get its light from? It gets its light from all of the levels above it. Meaning to say, the more you become a tzaddik, the more light there is in your prayer. Because there is no actual light in your prayer. It comes from the tzidkus. It comes from your connection both to the tzaddik of the generation and the tzaddik within yourself. So the holier and the more pure you get, the more that your prayer is going to have koach and it's going to get answered. Like Rabbi Nachman says in the second Torah of Likutey Moharan, that a person who attains the level of the Brit, every single one of his prayers gets answered. And then it only becomes a matter of, is this prayer good for us or is it not? Is this prayer good for me or is it not? And then he gives a way to make sure that your prayer is for the best, because you're a danger now. You're like a man with a weapon. Now that you have attained the Brit, your tefillah is whole, your prayers get answered. So now you need to make sure it's in line with what's good in the world and what's good with yourself. Also, Rabbi Nachman explains elsewhere that the only real barometer for how a person's growing spiritually is how he's praying. Meaning he can know by the quality of his prayer if he's growing spiritually. If he, he's not talking to Hashem, if he is struggling and speaking to Hashem, if he doesn't have koach, he doesn't have intensity, he doesn't have fervor, he doesn't have concentration in his prayer. So it means that also his spirituality is taking a toll. It's lacking. So it's a good sign. So if a person wants to know, where am I holding spiritually? How much am I becoming, so to speak, dissolved within my prayer? Because ultimately, Rabbi Nachman says the highest level of tefillah is when you forget the surroundings around you, meaning when you experience bitul, when you nullify within the prayer itself, you forget even that there's anything else going on or that there's anybody around you. That means that you have achieved real tefillah. You have achieved bitul. You've achieved devekut with Hashem. So that's a loaded answer. So pretty much every single class or every lesson that you learn in Likutey Moharan is going to bring you closer and closer to perfected prayer.
Oh, that gives me hope, because before it sounded like, listen, you got a long way to go and you got a lot of homework to do. So get to it. No sleep for you to reach these.
No. It is the truth is it is going to take a long time.
Of course.
But Rav Natan teaches that the benefit of having Rabbi Nachman in your life is that b'schut the zivug that you have with the tzaddik, meaning because you're attached to the tzaddik by learning his Torah, by praying in his schut, by doing his advice. So as a result of that, so to speak, you get his VIP card. That even before you get to the level of this master of tefillah, like Rabbi Nachman has the story, the master of prayer, which is alluding to the Mashiach. So at the same time, you can, so to speak, get his schut right now if Rav Natan says you really are trying your hardest. If you're trying your hardest to elevate spiritually and connect to the tzaddik of the generation, then Hashem will count it for you like you already, so to speak, are holding there. But if you're not, then you don't have his schut, and you obviously don't have your own schut because you haven't perfected it yet.
Okay. Thank you so much. One more
Great
question.
Go
So
ahead.
I'm glad you actually brought that up, lesson 2, because I remember that I was just reading a couple weeks ago. There was towards the end of the lesson, he brought in a story that from Rabbi Barbara
Chana.
Chana, the one with the ship and the fish and the sand. Oh, what an amazing story!
Yeah,
So
it's great.
deep and so unbelievable. So the reason I wanted to bring this up, and you reminded me just now when you brought up lesson 2, is because this is now a reoccurring theme of connecting to the tzaddik of the generation, or connecting to the true tzaddik. And I think I asked you this a couple months ago, but now that it's really revolving and coming back, I really want to make sure that I could at least come closer to perfection on this also. In this story, Rabbi Barbachana, it talks about how the fish, okay, is the tzaddik, and in order to connect, it was referring, it was talking about how Moshe and the tabernacle, when the Jewish people went to build, they had one last piece to build in the Mishkan and the tabernacle, and they had one piece left, and it said all the whole community, all the manpower, they couldn't lift it no matter what they had. So ultimately they had to give up, and they had not give up, but they had to come to Moshe. And Moshe
Nice.
was the final piece of the puzzle in order to put it together. So this is the same concept of the prayer coming to the tzaddikim to elevate the prayer to Hashem.
Exactly.
Now, how do I connect to the true tzaddikim?
So Rabbi Nachman says in the 4th Torah of Likutey Moharan how you connect to the tzaddik of the generation. First way that you connect, the first level of connection, is to see his face. What does it mean
It's
for
the
us to
fourth, you
see?
said?
Yeah. What does it mean for
Okay,
us
good,
to see?
because I'm almost done with the 3rd year, so
Okay, good.
it's coming up.
Good. So I'm going to give you a little preview. What does it mean to connect to the tzaddik of the generation? It's to see his face. This is the lowest level of attachment. How do you see the tzaddik's face if he passed away? So it's not a problem, because Rabbi Nachman explains elsewhere in the Likutey Moharan, to see the tzaddik's face is to learn his wisdom, because a person's panim, right, their face relates to their panimi, their inside, their wisdom. So when you learn the tzaddik's panimi, his wisdom, you're seeing his panim, you're seeing his face. Okay, so when we're learning the Likutey Moharan right now, you're attaching yourself to the tzaddik of the generation. Okay, that's one. That's good. You're seeing his face, and that's also the reason why you feel so good when you're learning his Torah. You feel alive, you feel excited, you feel hope. All of that becomes when you really see a tzaddik's face, even in real life. Bezrat Hashem, you're going to see many when you come to Israel. If you really see a tzaddik's face, you will see all of the negativity inside of you just lift in the moment that you're with him. You're going to feel tremendous awe. You're going to feel tremendous peace, all just by seeing the face of the tzaddik. Okay? I remember there was a story I heard from Reb Daniel Katz when I was in Uman 2 years ago, and he was telling us about this guy who's struggling with different things. He came to a very big tzaddik of the generation, and he said to him, "What should I do?" He said, "On Shabbat, come to pray and look at the face of a tzaddik." So he said, "I don't know who's a tzaddik. I don't know whose face to look at." And he said, "Look at my face." So then they asked him, they said, "Did he look at his face? What happened?" He said, "I don't know, but I did." So anyway, this is the looking at the face of the tzaddik. You feel like an uplifting of everything. And we're learning, the essence of that is to learn that wisdom. Okay, so that's what you're doing. And when you makayim, when you actually do the things that Rabbi Nachman says to, that's also an extension of that. Meaning if you take what you're learning now and you apply it, you're attached to the tzaddik at the lowest level. How do you get up to the second rung? Second rung is only done b'schut tzedakah. When you give tzedakah to the tzaddik of the generation, or in this case, to the people who give over his Torah, or to the people who write books to give over, like BRI does. If you give tzedakah to them, or if you give tzedakah to Michael Ben Melech, or to Gedalia Fenster, to Tzion Breslov. So when you give tzedakah to any of these entities, you're causing that these teachings should proliferate in the world. And that is causing a higher level of attachment than even just looking at the face of the tzaddik. Okay? But you need to do one with the other. You can't just give tzedakah and not at the same time try to see his face, learn his Torah, or there are steps of a ladder. First thing is to actually see his face. Second is to give tzedakah. And the third and the highest level of attachment is when you do teshuvah to Hashem in front of the tzaddik, which in our case would be getting to Uman for Rosh Hashanah. Okay? Then you reach the highest level of attachment.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So at this
You're
point,
welcome.
I think we need to have more Zoom classes so I could see your face a little more.
I'm not that side. I'm not the guy.
Okay. I'm gonna.
But here, if I put this in front of my face,
yeah,
black is beautiful.
for you also. For you also.
Okay, good. Just check out the book.
Okay.
Anybody
Beautiful.
else?
It was great class. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you so
It was
much.
amazing having the sunrise in the back too. It was a wonderful.
Beautiful.
To
Feel
the
good. Happy to
Thank you.
see that. Anybody else?
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
Do women have to go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah?
So women don't usually go for Rosh Hashanah, but women do go to Uman. The time that they usually go is Hanukkah time. They actually run women's trips then. I would love to, Bezrat Hashem, in the future, that Zion should be able to have trips to Uman. I'm really hoping. That depends on the success of the fundraiser and things like that. And I want to run both men's and women's trips. So usually women go Hanukkah time. Hanukkah is a very, very auspicious time. It's a time of tremendous miracles. The Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nachman, spoke about Hanukkah like it's mamash above this physical world. So when I wasn't there for Hanukkah last year, I saw a lot of women there. So that would be the time that I would mark out in your calendar if you're able to go.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
Actually, the sunrise, it's been almost 2 years since I last saw sunrise in Israel, so that's great.
Wow, amazing. See, the benefit of coming to Israel and then teaching the Americans is that you guys get to see the sunrise in Israel. It's beautiful.
Some of us are Canadians.
Canadians are good also. Canadians are good. Canada's got great air over there. Very fresh air. I noticed it was very clean when I was in Toronto as a kid.
Oh, not right now. We've got fires in our province, but.
Oh, okay. Hashem should protect you guys.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we sign off? Good? Okay. Everybody have an amazing day. Amazing night if you're in America. Amazing day if you're in Israel. And Bezrat Hashem, have a great Shabbat, a happy Shabbat. Tisha B'Av is right after Shabbat. So Hashem Mamash should be a Chag. This year it should be a holiday, and we should all celebrate together, b'simcha, with joy. The Mashiach should be born on Tisha B'Av, like it says about the Mashiach, that his soul is born on Tisha B'Av. Bezrat Hashem, it should be 5781. The Mashiach should be born, and he should take us all to Uman for Rosh Hashanah this year. Everybody have an amazing day.